Let's catch up with the former Deputy Prime Minister, now Barnaby Joyce, who's a Nationals backbencher. He joins me from Tamworth. Thanks for joining us, Barnaby. I want to ask you first up about the government's response to the coronavirus issue. We've got a number of cases of infection here. There are now concerns about passengers on a Tiger Airways flight. There are concerns about visitors to one particular restaurant. Has the government handled this well? Have we cut off the influx of possible infected people from China quickly enough?
Well, we're managing it as best we can. There's never anything that's a perfect outcome, Chris. Obviously, a perfect outcome would be no one with the coronavirus in Australia, but they're here. I imagine that there's more of them. What we have to do is realise that we take our facts from the health departments, not off Twitter or Facebook. The fundamentals of this virus, it's determined its virility, it's determined its capacity to transfer, it's determined by the factor R to the naught, or the R naught factor. It's about, if your influenza is about 1.3, this is about 1.4 to 2.5, some say up to 3. They say it has a fatality rate of around about 3%. But remember, you've got a lot of old people that are involved in that and very young. It's not to be taken as a joke, most certainly very, very serious. And that's why we're opening up Christmas Island. That's why there's quarantine measures in place, and that's what there should be. But it's not the Great Plague. We've got to be careful that we don't start talking about it as it is.
Now, of course, Australia is in an enviable position on these biosecurity sorts of issues that you've been involved in before, because we're an island nation. But we do have a lot of to and fro from China, with people in our Australian Chinese community, with business people, with tourists. Is there any consideration to be given to actually closing off flights from China altogether for a period?
Chris, unfortunately, it's not going to be a factor closing off China. This virus is now in every corner of the globe, so it's coming from Guangzhou, it's coming from Shenzhen, it's obviously in Wuhan, it's now in Beijing, it's in the United States of America, it's in Canada, it's in Japan, it's in Thailand, it's in Europe and France. You're going to it's going to be a difficult time, and there has to be the proper screening. But saying the highest risk is China, but the risk is now every corner of the globe. So that's what happens when you've got aircrafts and trains, the immediate transport of people to every corner of the globe, and looks like the disease sheds before you actually have a symptom. That's one of the unfortunate characteristics of this. Is you don't necessarily feel sick, but if you have the disease, you'll be giving it to other people as you go around. So a lot of your own sort of self-management comes into play. You basically obviously wash your hands, don't sneeze openly, and look around on any person who does. Cleanliness, that won't remove the risk, but it reduces the risk, and that's unfortunately. And the Australians have now managed to create this, or to able to recreate this virus, or go in the first steps of developing a vaccine. But we're probably still months away, if not longer, from the vaccine that we can use.
Now, moving to domestic political issues, you've spoken out in defence of your Deputy Nationals leader, Bridget McKenzie, in the past. Nothing's going to move on that until the Prime Minister gets his report from the head of his department. But if Bridget McKenzie does resign, would you rule out putting your hand up for a deputy's position?
Well, let's go through this. It's like saying, if you were to leave your partner, would you consider doing this? Well, that's a very big statement. Let's not grab a hypothetical and start rolling with that. I'm backing Bridget in, have at the start, have through the middle, and still do, because this is how it works. You have third parties and bureaucracies that advise a minister. They're not to lead a minister. A minister has to have the capacity to be the boss of their department. And ministerial decisions are made, and if you don't like them, tough luck. You can have an election and deal with it there. But nothing illegal has happened, and there's this presumption that she's done something illegal. If there is a great malfeasance, then tell me exactly what it is, and then we can have the inquiry into that. I'm still perplexed as to what exactly Mr. Gaetjens is investigating. Tell me where the problem lies, and let's have the discussion about that. And we better be awfully careful as to what we believe the problem is, because we might find there's lots of people, if he discovers a problem, who are part of it. I would say quite clearly there is no problem. It's ministerial discretion. It happens every time. If we started putting people in jail or accusing them of a a criminal act who utilised ministerial discretion would have to build a big new jail right next to Goulburn Jail to put them all in, because it's an absurdity. Ministerial discretion happens every day.
I don't think anybody is suggesting anything criminal here, and I certainly am one of those who have not seen how a resignation here is absolutely inevitable. And my reason for that is I think the problem here is pork barrelling. I think all taxpayers ought to be worried about political pork barrelling with their taxpayers' funds. But I think the real issue here is that at Barnaby Joyce that Bridget McKenzie is pork barrelling on behalf of the whole government. If she's to actually be forced into resignation for this process, then then she's paying a price for all of you.
And then after that, we'll go back to the Labor Party. Will have to resign for whatever they've done. I mean, it comes down to ministerial discretion. Might I just go to one issue here? If Minister McKenzie had utilised the recommendations for the Labor Party as was brought to her, there would have been less grants to Labor Party seats than what we actually ended up with. She actually changed it so more Labor Party seats got more money. Now,
that's the infamous reverse pork barrelling.
Yeah, well, whatever you call it. I wouldn't have, maybe it's a bit of a clumsy expression, but I'm not one to criticise anybody on that. But, I'm going to stick to my guns. This is ministerial discretion. It happens every day. Unless you can tell me what she's done illegal, or unless you can show me how she's, misappropriated taxpayers' funds in an unreasonable manner, then we have nothing to look at here. And therefore, all this other sort of conniving and sneakiness going on in the background, that should stop. You should get behind the person who's in your team. That's Bridget McKenzie. I'm going to continue to back her in. And, the ponder will be, if she's found guilty of something, then it won't be just her that's got a problem.
Barnaby Joyce, thanks for joining us.